I did want to ask you about Jim McCarthy, because that's somebody that I would love to have on the podcast. So, Mr. McCarthy, if you're listening, you are welcome on anytime. We talked about the rejection you went through, the agent we won't talk about. There were, everybody tried their best, it didn't work out. How did you come to secure representation by Jim, and how? Listen to me, I've never met the man, Jim McCarthy, Mr. McCarthy. How did you come to gain representation for him, and how did you know he was the agent that was going to bring you to Guam?
Jim McCarthy is my agent, and he's at Distal Godrich and Barrett, and he is a treasure. Because I'm so open about my struggles and my journey and whatnot, a lot of people come to me and talk to me about their agent relationships and, oh, is this right? Is this normal? Is this whatever? So I hear a lot about other agents, and there are a lot of great agents. But Jim is, I truly believe he's the best one there is. Like, it's not one of those things where I'm like, he's really great for me. No, I really think he's the best one there is. I might be a little bit biased.
I would say that every agent who has been on this show is the best agent.
Yeah, well, you can't show bias. Although if you want to get Jim on, no, but what makes him so special is his communication, and that is the number one thing I hear from people who are having struggles with their agent is issues with communication. And Jim's clients, we joke that if he hasn't responded to an email within an hour, we're sending out a search party because something is wrong. But as to how I signed with him, so I queried 5 books before I got my first agent. It was a lot, and it was 290 queries. I kept track. And so that was a long road. And I was with her for a few years.
Your rejection someplace where they'd motivate you to keep going?
I didn't print out the actual, because most of them were email at this point. But I had a document where I tracked who I had queried and when they responded and stuff. So that's how I was able to count how many. But my choice to part ways with her was really difficult because it had been so hard the first time, and I was absolutely convinced I would not get another agent. She had put multiple books on submission that hadn't sold. And so I thought she was the only person in all of publishing who had ever given me a yes, and so I didn't think I would find anyone else. And it was really hard. And it was only through, support of critique partners and other mentor types that gave me the confidence to say, even if you don't get another agent, you're miserable right now. You will be better off, starting fresh. And so parted ways. I had a book ready to go at the time that we were starting to talk about putting it on submission. So I used it to query. And I only had to query one small batch of agents. And in that first batch of agents I queried, I got multiple offers, including Jim. And from the first time I talked to him, he's incredibly warm. He's funny. He just made me feel at ease. Every time I talk to him, even when we're talking so he can tell me that we got a whole bunch of rejections and this book isn't going to sell, I still come away feeling better than I did before. Because he's just a lovely person, and he cares. And some agents are all business, and that works for some authors, and that's fine. But there are a fair few authors who need some hand-holding, and I think it's good to know that about yourself, because if you are that kind of person, an all business agent isn't going to be ideal for you. They are your business partner, and that's important. But there are also agents who know how to be a bit more nurturing and hand-holding, and Jim is definitely one of those, and I appreciate it because I do rely on that. But yeah, so it was just through regular querying, no fancy pitch contests or anything. I think a lot of times people see that there's so many of these different Twitter pitch contests and things, and that's the only way to get an agent's attention, but that's just not true. Most people get their agent from regular old querying, which is how I did it, and I talked to him, and I just knew I ended up having another conversation with another agent who offered, but I knew after the first conversation that it was Jim, and it's been, I guess we're in our 4th year, and I still just absolutely adore him. That first book, and actually that first book that I queried him wasn't Bloodwater Paint, so it was something else that we put on submission that didn't sell. So that continued, but he stuck with me, and he signed me on middle grade. But then he sold my debut was a YA. And then I was like, I want to try a chapter book. He sort of is willing to go with me anywhere, which I really appreciate.
So, and for all of you listening who are right this moment typing out queries to Jim McCarthy, make sure you mention you heard about him on the show and that he needs to come on the show. Let him know. But something that I know that writers who are listening are obsessed with, because I've been obsessed with it at different points, especially having been once bitten, twice shy, with having had a bad experience with an agent. You had to be extra hyper aware of what you were getting into, making sure, this is second marriage, we're going to do it right this time. So how did you go about evaluating him during that conversation? What specific things were you looking for? And I realize I'm asking you about something that worked out perfectly that happened 4 years ago, but as best you can recall.
Well, I will say, first of all, that it's not like you have to get it right the second time either. It is so common in this business for writers and agents to part ways. It happens all the time. And sometimes it's because agents leave agenting, and sometimes it's because you decided you want to write adult and the agent doesn't rep adult or whatever. It happens all the time, and it's not a mark against you. Like if an agent sees that you have parted ways with someone else, all that shows them is that you were good enough to get an agent the first time. So it's not a bad thing, and it's not, it's not a permanent decision. If you sign with a second person and it doesn't work out, you'll query again. So I would just say that first. But then I would also say, and I didn't have the advantage of this, but if you go to Jim's Twitter, which is Jim McCarthy 528, I think. But if you search Jim McCarthy, you'll find him. His pinned tweet is a post he wrote about the questions you should ask an agent when you are having the call with them. And it's a really good post. And actually, right after he signed me, he was writing this post. And he wrote to me and said, could you send me the list of questions you asked me? Because your questions were really good. I don't really remember what my questions were. So you could consult Jim's post. But the one thing I would suggest to anybody who is getting at fielding offers from agents is you need to talk to the agent's clients. You need to talk to somebody who they have not sold a book for, because you don't want to only talk to, the agent will give you the names of people who are super, super happy with them, right? So they're going to give you people that they know are going to say the most glowing things. But if you talk to somebody who had a book not sell with the agent, that tells you a lot about how that agent treats their clients. Because I had a book not sell with Jim, and I still never felt like I wasn't a priority to him. I still felt like he was behind me and he believed in me. And that's really important, because there are people who, when a book doesn't sell, they feel like their agent loses confidence in them, or isn't interested in seeing more from them or whatnot. So talking to multiple clients, talking to clients whose books haven't sold, if you can, is really important. That's the number one thing I suggest when talking to agents.
And it occurs to me, as we're talking about agents, we talked about writers oversharing on Twitter. Agents, watch yourself. I follow lots of agents, and I'll never reveal anybody by name, but when I see them talking about just secured a realtor's license, just found a way to get a second job, that is not something that's going to provide overwhelming comfort and encouragement to querying authors. So maybe be careful a little bit with that as well.
I think it's so hard, because it is really hard for agents to get to the point where they can make a living. They really have to have quite a stable of authors behind them before they're making enough in commissions. So I can understand what you're saying, but also a lot of agents who are just starting out, do have to have some other kind of income because, I don't know how they do it. But yeah, the one thing I really don't like to see from agents is sometimes when they talk about specific things they're passing on. And if it's specific enough that a writer could see that tweet and think, oh no, they're talking about my query, that's not good, because and I could see a writer's or an agent tweeting about how this portal fantasy wasn't good enough, and I don't write portal fantasy, and I would still find a way to think, oh my gosh, they meant mine. They just, like we're so quick to latch onto things, that are our insecurities. So yeah, I don't love when I see agents referring to things they're passing on with too much specificity.
I got a terrible erotic novel today. Is that code for my middle grade book?
Right. I would find a way to do that. It's that, we all have a sort of a little tiny touch of narcissism.
I'm trying to remember who it was. One of the agents I had on said that the average is about 5 to 7 years between the time you first start selling projects and when those residuals catch up to where you are making a full-time living from agenting.
Yeah, that is a long time to get on your feet, right? And you don't have to be in New York City, but so many of them are, where cost of living is so high. Jim started at the agency that he is still at as an intern in college, and has been there this whole time, which is a stability that I really like, because a lot of agents move around so much, and that can be okay. But I really like knowing that he has a home where he is comfortable and he is likely to stay in the long term. It just feels more secure to me.
And obviously, when I'm talking about agents that I follow agents of other genres just to see what agents are up to. Obviously, anyone who's ever appeared on the show or whoever will appear on the show is an amazing agent. You should absolutely query them. These are the other agents I don't invite to come on I'm talking about.